information, POI, the speaker may accept or decline them. A POI may be offered by a member of the opposing team from the 2nd minute to the 7th minute of time allocated to the speaker. Points of information are not allowed during the first and final minutes of the speech. A bell will be rung to signal the beginning and the ending of the time allocated for points of information. A time limit of 15 seconds is allowed for each POI. Giving and taking of points of information should be done politely. A speaker is required to raise his or her hand and to stand when putting forth a POI. Rude, abusive or aggressive behavior in both instances will lead to a reduction of marks from the style section. A speaker must give or take at least 2 points of information during the course of the debate. After all the speakers have spoken once, the first or second speaker for each side gives a reply speech with the opposition reply being delivered first and the government second. No points of information may be offered during the reply speech. Finally, no heckling or harassment or barracking is allowed at any time during the debate. I would like to remind everyone in this House of Parliament to turn off your mobile phones or set them on silent mode so as not to interrupt the course of today's debate. Without further ado, I call upon the Prime Minister for the Government, Muhammad Arif, to deliver his speech on today's motion. The House believes that all students should be required to perform 1 year of community service.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone here. I bid to the honourable judges, to respect the opposition, the precise timekeepers, and of course, members of the floor. Today, we are joined to debate about the motion, which is, this House believes that all students should be required to perform 1 year of community service. So I, as the Prime Minister, will be giving my mechanism and one argument, and also why we are here with our case line for the motion. So my Deputy Prime Minister will be giving 2 arguments and also a rebuttal on the opposition. And also my Third Minister will be rebutting every single point that is being given by the opposition leader and also the vice opposition leader. So allow me to give the definitions based on the motion today. So what we mean by students is students at the age of 16 years old, only this year, particularly year, because we think they have ample time and knowledge. And since the motion states that it's only 1 year, so we choose this year for 16-year-olds. What we mean by required is we are requiring every single 16-year-old to do it. But if they are incapable to do the service, they are excused. For example, if they have health conditions, they can be excused. What we mean by community is a group of people living in the same area. And what we mean by community service is work done by a person or a group of people that benefits others in an area. So which community that a student must do community service will be explained in my mechanism later on. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to give the case line to all of you today, which is, we the government would like all students to be required to perform 1 year of community service because it is to mold more civic conscience into society. What we mean by mold is to shape. What we mean more is to increase more civic conscience inside students. As of now, in a community, there's a society. So what we mean by society is people who interact with each other and help each other. So let me give a brief context on why exactly the government wants to require students to do 1 year of community service. Let's look at the reality today, ladies and gentlemen. A fair majority in the generation of X, Y, Z, and Alpha, they all would most likely be playing with their gadgets rather than go outside and confirm and interact with reality. This is because gadgets itself is much more. So okay. Allow me to give the reasons why the government is introducing the case line today. So we now know that students nowadays will be most likely to play with gadgets it is very simple to see that in everyday life, even at anywhere we see at bus stops, people are playing with gadgets. And after school, even after school, students will go home, and rather than go outside and play, it is most likely a fair majority will go and play their gadgets rather than do reality activities. Okay, right. So what the government wants to do today, right? What the government wants to do today is to implement a much more alternative activity for the students rather than them playing with gadgets. That's why the government stands by the case. Okay, I accept your reply. Okay, how exactly the government is trying to implement 1 year of community service for students? As I mentioned earlier, it's for 16-year-olds, but we, the government, would also allow other student forms to join in this community service. So, how exactly are we going to implement this community service in schools is that we're going to put this community service activities in co-curriculum. Now, club members can do community service based on activities that are related to the club. So, we are putting a requirement of minimum requirement of 5 activities. So every club needs to do 5 activities of community service. We are basing on these 5 activities, basing on their effectiveness and quality, rather than putting minimum hours like college requirements nowadays. So like I said, the community service is related to the club's activities. For example, sports clubs like football can have friendly matches and help the younger athletes in improving their techniques. How they're going to have friendly matches is we know that there are fields in the community where people used to play football, so they can have friendly matches, and they will help bring a much more merrier situation. Other than that, BM clubs can socialize with other people. For example, they can give speeches, and they can also socialize with old people.
How is extracurriculum activities related to community service? Could you explain on that?
Basically, the activities itself is the community service. It relates to the club activities. Just like I said with the sports clubs, it's going to have the community with, the students helping the younger ones. Okay. Also, art clubs can paint murals and such to enlighten the mood around the community. Okay, if the student doesn't know what to do about community service, the teacher can brief the students in the club. As for the activities, it must be documented for proof. So with introducing this community service, it will give a better purpose for the club activities during co-curriculum. Allow me to get into my first our first argument, which is it helps develop communal relationships. So right now, like I said in the beginning, nowadays students are more prone to do to use gadgets rather than interact with other people in the society. Right now, with community service, it helps people recognize the community that they are living in. Sometimes the students don't know who exactly they are living with, but with community service, they're going to help people around them, and the barrier that separates between people to socialize will be broken off with interactions made, and the sense of awkwardness will be lifted up. So let me give the conclusion of my speech, which is we the government today stand by our case sign is because by implementing civic consciousness, by molding more civic consciousness in our students, it is going to fill their lives with people who are going to be more prone to do the right things. With that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Muhammad Arif.
8:45.
I shall now invite Fazli as the opposition leader to deliver his speech.
According to Article 23(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to work and a free choice to do so. Wouldn't allowing this motion to be implemented be breaking the human rights set by the United Nations? Wouldn't this be against the government's promise, the Malaysian government's promise to ratify all international conventions on human rights? But before that, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to the wise judges, the accurate timekeeper, Madam Speaker, the worthy opponents, and my fellow comrades, and of course, the members of the House. Today, we will convince you on why we believe it is wrong and see now to have all students be required to do 1 year of community service. So let me just tell about the rules of the opposition team. So as first speaker and opposition leader of the opposition team, I will be rebutting some of the Prime Minister's points and talk about how it violates civil rights and is inefficient to the community. The second speaker will talk about will rebut a few points of the Deputy Prime Minister and talk about mental health as well. And the third speaker will rebut all of the points given out by the government team. So let us look at the motion here today. This House believes that all students should be required to perform 1 year of community service. Let's look at 3 key words or sentences here. So it says, all students required community service. So all students means all students, not just 16-year-olds. It's in the preposition that you have proposed here. All students. You can't just say 16-year-olds because that is not in the subject today. Required means forcing someone to do so. And community service means doing work for the community. So actually, give me a second. Let me reword the debate to show its actual true nature. What it's trying to say is that this House believes that all students should be forced to do work under the servitude of the government for 1 year. We disagree with this. We disagree with the motion given out. We actually don't disagree with community service because it has a lot of benefits. It also has benefits, but we disagree with the 1 year requirement for students. This proposition is preposterous. Now students have to do labor. Instead of work, instead of studying in schools. Seriously, can you think about that?
You are.
Yes.
It's not exactly. It's actually helping the community.
But it's still labor though, because you are still doing work for the community and you are still not getting paid though. So I hope that answers the POI. So now let me get on to my rebuttals. Students. So what the Prime Minister of the government team has said that students love to play gadgets. That is a wrong stereotype, and I disagree with that. You see, every day when I went outside of the courtyard when we were eating just now, I saw a lot of students playing football together. A lot of students, more than 22 players playing football in the school's courtyard. That means like I've also seen a lot of Putrajaya students play football during the weekends. This is like, this completely shows that his stereotype showing that a lot of students like to play with their gadgets is is wrong, and therefore, because we can see a lot of students, they love to play football here. So I have to disagree with his opinion, with his stereotype on why.
Clarification.
Yes.
The thing is, what the government is not trying to do is trying to help the people who are more prone to use gadgets, not really, that we also agree.
You're taking too much of my time. Sorry. A lot of students. So, and talking about football, if we force students to do community service, it will take this fun of playing football away. The Prime Minister also said that that community service is extracurricular. I'm pretty sure that the government actually does not understand the definition of community service, which is actually helping the community, not playing football, not playing basketball or whatever, or just doing art in school. It's just mostly. I'm pretty sure that also the government team had went for community service as well. Actually, community service is mostly just painting the sides of the roads or just sweeping the floors. Now, let me move on to my points. So, number one of my point is that it will be problematic to the students having to do it for a total of 1 year, which is in the motion. 1 year will interfere with grades. How? It takes much of your time away from studying and focus it on work.
Point of clarification.
A decline. Although community service is an advantage to get, yes, community service is an advantage to get into universities, especially international universities, we have to remember, it is just extra, not a must. Grades are much more important, and grades are still much more important than extracurricular activities or community service, and it's still the main reason why universities from outside of the country still select strict A+ students to get into and give them scholarships to enter their universities. And number two, it will violate the civil rights of, as I've said, Article 23(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, set by the United Nations, says that humans are given the right to work, which means they can either work or not work. And also community service is work. But by requiring students to do community service, they have no option to say no. Because if we allow this to be enforced, that means that we will have to persecute the students either by caning or whatever to do community service. So we are essentially forcing them, and if they don't do so, they will break the law. Thank you. And number three, it will also produce inefficient labor for the community as well. According to an article I read on New York Times, having students do work will produce low quality work and also give low morale to the students. Students are meant to study, and not unguided. So I'm pretty sure that most of us in the members of the house have went for community service and know that they don't even teach us on how to do it. They just only ask us what to do, and then we do so, which means that community service does not actually teach the students anything at all. It just forces them to do work. In conclusion, making it mandatory will no longer make community service voluntarily. Therefore, it will tarnish the name of community service, which is meant to make the spirit of society brighter, not diminish the future generation's motivation and happiness by force. So we propose two alternatives to this instead. Instead, we encourage people to set up new community service organizations so that more people can come in and help the community out voluntarily, not mandatorily. And number two, we will also give prisoners the option to do community service, which allows them to exit the confines of jail as well. With that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Fazli.
Act 35.
upon the Deputy Prime Minister Akmal Badisha to deliver her speech.
Alright, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable judges, fellow Kebangsaan government, vice and keepers, and the opposition. Alright, I will move on to my rebuttals for today. And as stated by the opposition leader before, that the government is actually not using community service as a service itself. We would like to clarify that community service, why do we require the students? Is because we want to educate the students to become active inside their community and to break the status quo, to bring a sense of community and togetherness. This is why we want community service. Alright, going on to other rebuttals. And we all know human rights. What is actually human rights? We are not actually forcing them, we are requiring them because this is in the education aspect. And alright, you all know that labor and all that, forced labor, child labor, etc., they are based on exploitation. So why are you saying that we are exploiting our kids when we want them, we're regulating them to have this? Alright, we want to connect to the reality, alright? In the government world, we believe that we want them to be happy and to know their community. As said by the Prime Minister before, that some people in the neighborhood do not even know their own neighbors. And also, why did the government say that they are only forcing on to their gadgets and not interact at home? This is because we believe that people inside the house or inside the society now, they only hold on to their gadgets and have less social interaction because they can lie to themselves and they could lie to the people and they will be self-conscious to meet other people actually in the real life. Alright, I'm moving on. I would like to clarify what the Prime Minister said about the curriculums and all that. Okay, he did a stance about being in a football sport. We also know that that is actually one of the examples that we could do in order of tutoring, because we are actually teaching them techniques. As another explanation is that we could have people from the English Society Club to go for community service, such as to go to the homeless people places and actually teach them English. Isn't that the best way for the students to actually interact with other people and then communicate with our own community? Alright, and we all know from this, because the government wants to implement it in the curriculum. We want them to do it after school in the curriculum days. And why do we say it? Because they actually have the funds. For each and every single club, we collect money and collect funds around 1 month, 5 ringgit along that line, and that is actually a quite good amount of expense to go to homeless houses and etc. Alright, now moving on to my arguments. Why does the government believe that we want to have this stance, which is this house believes that all students should be required to perform 1 year community service to promote more civic conscious society? This is because this showcases talent. Students are allowed to be creative. They can be whatever they want, and then they could showcase the talent that they have. We all know that sometimes they only show their creativity on social media, but then they could implement it actually inside the real world. And I point that it's education based. They actually help their peers, help themselves, and actually help themselves be happy. And also that they could promote self-growth. They could then realize themselves that, hey, I actually have this talent that I could show to my other friends and other peers and even the community that I have this talent that I could share with everyone. This is beneficial for the student and for all the people inside the community. And then I would like to then explain, it could also help in hands-on experiences. We all know that we have civic education at school, which we learn every single day about civic education, about being in the community service. But is that really enough? We want a hands-on experience. That is why we require this at school, and it's only for 1 year. And also we are still promoting education because it is actually supporting volunteerism. The kids who are not in the year of 16-year-old, they could actually help and go if they want to volunteer and help these 16-year-olds to go to the homeless houses or even orphanages if they want to. Alright, now moving on to my third argument is that it is a way to connect to the real world. We all know that these gadgets do not really help these people to have a social life. And what we mean by social life is that, yes?
Are you saying that people who use gadgets, hence social media, don't have a stable touch of reality? Could you explain?
I would like to clarify that we are talking about a reality. A fair majority of people, they do not have the skill to be in an introduction of, no, it's missed. Why do we say that? This is because they are actually not in the real world. They are in a lie and illusion that they are actually superior or good enough. They are not good enough if they are not a well-rounded student. And also, why do we say that? It's because we want a well-rounded student. This is why the government wants to go with our stance, which is to perform one-year community service to mold more civic conscious society. We want a student to have a physically, emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually well-rounded aspect. And with that, they will complete each other, they will complement each other, they will help each other, and then they will know their community. When they know their community, they know themselves, they know their neighbors, and then they will create a bond of togetherness. They will then be extra happy, and then you will not even deny that they are actually a part of us, because we live in a community. We all know the definition of community is a group of people living in one place. Like now, in Presint 8, a community of Presint 8 is people who are living in Presint 8. And also, why do we want to connect to the real world again? It is the more holistic teaching and approach. We want them to know and actually help themselves. A holistic approach will then make them into a better person. They will then boost themselves into the real world, and then they will know that, hey, actually, I can do this. I have the confidence, I have the sources, I have the support of the people, and that they will know that I can do this. And also, I would like to then justify what the Prime Minister already said. Why, to the people that do not want to go, and because we are requiring them, they will then get less curricular marks, because we are using it in the curriculum. In the curriculum itself, we all know, even in the current system, that if you do not attend co-curricular activities, you will not get marks. So if they do not go to these, and because we are requiring them, they will get less marks, and then it will not help them to go to their university of choice. And with that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Akmal Batisha.
7-4. 4.
Ladies and gentlemen, now time to listen to the second opposition speaker, Ifa Hanan.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to the attentive speaker, wise educators, fellow comrades, the government team, and the members of the floor. Today, I, as the second speaker of the opposition team, will rebut some points given out by the second speaker of the government team and execute my own points to solidify our stance today. This House does not believe, and I repeat, does not believe that all students should be required to perform 1 year of community service. Now, before I begin, I would like to reaffirm the definition given out by my Prime Minister. He has stated that community service, by definition, is voluntary service. If you make this a requirement, doesn't that make it involuntary? Once you make it mandatory for students to do just so they could receive a graduation diploma or receive extracurricular marks, wouldn't it just make it involuntary service? Now, moving on to my rebuttal. Before I begin, I would like to state that the second speaker of the government team provided no evidence to back up her arguments, which invalidates her points overall. She did not provide any studies, any articles, any sources at all, which overall invalidates it. Not only that, she would highly depend on stereotypes, saying that our millennials today would always be indoors and play with the gadgets. Number one, there was no evidence show that she was right. And number two, I, coming from personal experience, could say that is not true for the majority. They use gadgets to communicate with other people, which can also help in socializing. Not only that, as said by my Prime Minister, he has stated there are still students, even today, who go out, who socialize, who try to create bonds and networks. Isn't it not fair for them to generalize this group? Moving on to my first point. I strongly believe that we should not make it a requirement for all students to perform 1 year of community service. This is because of stress. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, stress. Now, I know what you must be thinking. Second speaker, can stress be good? And although I can't deny that, it is only good if it is well balanced. I'm referring to overstressed, overworked, and also burnt out. Based on a study by Diane Deanna, she has stated that a sample decline. She has stated that a sample made by 333 10th and 11th grade students. I repeat, 10th and 11th grade students. Two of the most important years in a high school's life shows higher stress level than normal. Now, I bet the government team is dying to tell me that couldn't they just cope and learn how to cope with that stress? Well, ladies and gentlemen, decline. Now, based on the same study, it has stated that frequencies where coping mechanisms were actually employed were low. I repeat, low, meaning even though they are taught how to cope with that stress level, they don't actually implement that within their lifestyle. Wise educators, I'm sure that some of you are parents, if not all, and would understand how hard it is to see your children overworked and stressed. Some effects on students when they are overstressed, based on sciencetoday.com, is that it encourages poor performance within academics, diminishes their mental and physical health. Yes.
We said by the Prime Minister that we are only regulating 5 activities per year. Please clarify why are we actually stressing our kids? Thank you.
Well, second speaker, you did not clarify what kind of activities that they will be performing. It could be hard labor, it could be overworking themselves, and overall stressing themselves. Now moving on. Some effects decline. Some effects on students based on sciencetoday.com when you are overstressed is that it encourages poor performance, diminishes their mental and physical health, can lead to mental illnesses such as depression, and also last but definitely not least, suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, not only is this effect very, very horrible, do you really want the younger generation to be put in the state, to be added on the burden with this requirement? I bet not. Not only that, based on my additional watching from BBC News on YouTube, there is this one very passionate student who is working day and night just to get into his dream college. He has to balance out his life with studies, extracurriculums, and also community service. His mom always stresses out how he is always declined. His mother always stresses out on how he is always moody and always doesn't know, and lacks the ability to socialize more because he's always tired. Do we really want that to tarnish the performance of our children today? I bet not. Secondly, elaborating from my effects of stress, if we make this a requirement, it would only encourage poor performance. As I stated before, if you make this a requirement, wouldn't you just overall make this voluntary service involuntary, especially if the students themselves perceive this as forced work? Once the student perceives this as forced work, it would only build up the frustration, which would nullify any positive performance or characteristics or desire to actually work with their pure, sincere heart. Do you really want students to perform half-heartedly within an organization who pour their heart and soul to help others? It would not only tarnish the reputation of the organization, but also the students, the school, and maybe it could negatively impact the future of the said student. Not only that, it can also encourage poor performance within school. Think about it. If they were to involve themselves in community service, especially one that involves helping animals or people in need, once they are done with it, they might have built emotional attachment. Yes.
Alright, so you're saying that a lot of this blah 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 blah, but do you say that it's going to have pure pressure and they will have stress and pro studies? But are you denouncing that the current co-curriculum could actually have them to have poor studies because we are actually implementing it in the co-curriculum time? So are you saying that this co-curriculum is not viable?
You're taking too much of my time. Sit down. Now, not only that, based on psychology.com, it has stated that this time frame when teenagers are learning and growing, facing through puberty, they are learning how to grow and adapt with the emotions that are just being introduced. Why mustn't we make it more difficult for them by adding the emotional attachment? It will only interfere and distract them from the studies. Last and not least, it is counterproductive. As I said before, if the student perceives this as forced work, their performance will only diminish. Not only that, if you're saying that they could build characteristics such as leadership and also sympathetic, become more sympathetic, wouldn't they go to more specific programs such as leadership programs? Leadership programs in Malaysia, such as Malaysia Global Institute for Tomorrow or GIFT, and also in the US, such as Be Happy in Life, could actually help them in way better strategies and guidance rather than going to community service. And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Farhana.
833.
I was just I shall now call upon the third minister from the government, Gatra.
Good morning. I bid to the fellow educators, Madam Speaker, precise timekeepers, opposition team, comrades of the government team, and members of the floor. This House believes that all students should be required to perform 1 year community service to mold more civic conscious society. So the opposition has been going on and on about how we are requiring and it's labor to the students and they don't like it and all that. Well, we as the government, we believe that this is an education for them. We want to educate them to become a more civic conscious society so they can, when they grow up, they are more well-rounded and will become a more civic conscious society. So the opposition leader has stated that everyone has the right to choose. Well, we as the government, we agree with you, but we want them to have, we want to educate them so that they, we want to educate them so they can become a better student, a more well-rounded student. And the opposition also believes that we are requiring all students. Well, we are only requiring all students at the age of 16 years old. For 1, 2, 3, and 5 can voluntarily enter community service if they want to. We are just trying to educate them at 16 years old, so because 16 years old have more ample time and they are more mature. So, and the opposition teams also stated that the requiring means forcing. For us, like I said again and again, requiring for us means educating them so they can become a more civic conscious society. They also stated that they would be going to labor instead of studying. Well, it is not child labor because we are helping the community and we are taking care of their human rights. And the opposition also doesn't believe that majority of students spend their time with their mobile phones. Well, and they keep saying that or from their personal point of view that their school plays football and all that. Well, in school, when it is school time, gadgets and phones are restricted. That is why they are not playing their gadgets right now. If after school they would be playing their gadgets. Everywhere you see is just gadgets, and they are and majority are playing gadgets, and they are more socially awkward. The opposition leader also stated that we would be taking their time away by requiring a 1 year of community service. No, we are not taking their time away because we are taking their curriculum side or extracurriculum side of the school.
POI.
So we are only requiring every club to do 5 activities per year. So this is not taking their time away. Only 5 activities per year for each society. We are not asking them to go from school. After school, every day we'll go to community service. No, only 5 times per year. 5 times per year.
POI.
Yes.
The motion stated that the student is required 1 year of service, and you allocated 5 each year, at 5 stages each year. I don't really find time to do 1 year requirement. I don't really understand how the students can do 1 year requirement in those 5 timetables. Could you elaborate on that?
So the clubs and societies, they can be flexible at when they want to do their 5 activities per year. We are only requiring 5 activities per year because we are promoting on quality of the community service and not just trying to do them, not trying to ask them to do things over, we're not trying to ask them to do community service every day. And the opposition also stated that we would not have enough time to study. Well, I would repeat again, our mechanism is only requiring 5 times per year. And their mechanism encouraging new community service organizations and asking prisoners to do community service does not have anything, is a very idealistic mechanism compared to our mechanism, which is requiring 5 times per year for every club. It is our mechanism is more doable and more feasible. The vice opposition speaker also stated that students will be overworked and overstressed, and I would like to repeat again, I have been going on and on only 5 times per year. It is not that much time taken. We are only taking the extracurriculum time, so there is not much change in the timetable. So I would like to clarify again, this is not child labor because we are helping the community and their human rights are reserved. So our best case scenario, we will be creating a more civic conscious society and a more well-rounded community member that physically, emotionally, spiritually and intellectually. While the opposition side, they are only trying to create students that are education based on community service, and they are hoping that students will go to community service from on their own volunteer. We want to educate them so we can create a more civic conscious society like our stands, to a more civic conscious society, so that after school they would want to go to these community services. Our worst case scenario, however, if the students refuse to do community service, they will get lower extracurriculum grades because extracurriculum grades. So if they don't want to do it, it's fine, but it's gonna affect their opportunities to get to their dream university. Their worst case scenario will be if we don't educate the students to go to community service now, then less people will be aware of this, and less people will join community service. And also students will only be smart theoretically and not practically. So We, the government, we believe that all students should be required to perform 1-year community service to mold a more civic conscious society. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazra.
722.
It is now time to listen to the rebuttals of the third opposition speaker, Ismail.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I bid to the wise educators, the punctual timekeepers, to my fellow comrades, to the firm government team, and the members on the floor. Before I start rebutting all the points given by the government team, I would like to clarify that some of the arguments given by the government team are contradicting. They stated that only 16-year-olds would join this said motion, but the second and the third speaker also stated that all of the students will be involved in this. So you're contradicting yourself. Okay, now moving on to my points. I would like to rebut some of the points given by the Prime Minister first. Firstly, he used stereotypes to base his arguments. Now, stereotypes are meaningless. Stereotypes are just stereotypes. They're not the majority. They're decline. They're not the majority. They can be the minority. And also, he stated a point that contradicts his argument. He stated that before he began his speech, he stated that 16-year-olds would only be involved in this. But after that, he stated that all students from the form will be, all students in the school will be, involved.
Decline. Clarification, please.
Decline. And lastly, he related football as a type of community service. I don't really see how it works. I mean, like, yeah, there's a competition, but how does that help the community? How can you help the people in need by making competitions? I can't really see your statement here. I can't see your point. I can't see how your argument is irrelevant. Moving on to the second speaker. This deputy said that she used the term that most students are unactive. This is clearly wrong because in my personal experience, some of my friends are really active. We go out, we play, we socialize, we meet our neighbors. This is clearly wrong. The statement given by the second speaker is clearly wrong. Can't you see this? It's using a stereotype. Again, they're using a stereotype to base their arguments, which is really unjust and just pure blindsided.
Right.
Yes.
So you said I was contradicting myself. But is it viable to everyone that all students should be doing the community service? Would it be mayhem for everyone to just go out their way and do stuff?
Well, when I said you were contradicting, I said that you stated that 16-year-olds will only be involved. Then your second and the third speaker stated all students would be involved.
POI.
Decline.
POI.
Decline. Now, the second speaker stated that they can show talent in community service. But they can also show it in class. They can show it to their friends. They actually can acquire talents from class, from extracurricular activities. And to be exact, community service and extracurriculum has nothing to do with each other. They're different. They're absolutely different. they don't share the same thing. Community service helps the community. Extra curriculum is for extra marks and helps yourself, not the community. Now, as I was saying, you can acquire talents from joining extra curriculum activities. For example, like if I wanted to show my talent of music, I would join a music club. If I want to join that, I want to show that I'm good at chess, I can join a chess club. I don't really see the correlation between community service showing your own talent. I couldn't really see it. Now, she also used that people who use gadgets lose grip of reality. This is baseless. This is wrong. You know why? Because gadgets can actually show you what's happening in the real world. Social media, for example, are in gadgets. I can read people's opinion. I can show what's happening from the other side of the world. Her statement was really unjust and baseless. It shows how desperate the government team wants this motion to go on. It shows how desperate and baseless the arguments are. Now, moving on to her other point, she said that extracurriculum community service would mark up your qualification for going to university and such. Well, wouldn't extracurriculum points be enough?
POI.
Right. I mean, if you put community service into the markings, wouldn't it be redundant? Wouldn't it be more hard for them to graduate? Why are you making students why are you making the burden of students more heavier? Why do you want to burden the students? They want to graduate, they want jobs, but you're making them hard to do it so. Now, rebutting one of the POIs given by the third speaker, yes, you are allocated 5 activities for the 1 year for the motion, but I can't really see how you can pass the requirement only by doing it 5 times a year.
POI.
Yes.
Alright, we said that we are implementing it in extracurriculum time, and then it's only 5 times per year. We do extracurricular activities every single time in the year, so it's not really actually affecting their marks, and they actually are in the same mark scheme as it is because it's in extracurricular. Please clarify.
Well, yeah, but it's going to be harder for the students to do so. If you, for example, I took a test, then there's another test that I have to do to mark up my curriculum marks. It's really hard. It's a burden. And secondly, the thing is, you have to perform 1 year of community service. Perform 1 year at least. How can you do it in 5 when you're doing it 5 times in a year? You're supposed to do 1 year. Well, 1 year of community service, 1 whole year of community service. I think you misinterpreted the point, the motion. Now, moving on to the third speaker. You said that you agree that we should that you agree that we should have a choice to do so, to choose what we want to do. But why are you requiring 1 year of community service towards a student? This is just contradicting to your points given to your argument, which I think is senseless. Okay, denying the truth that it burdens the students doesn't make you right. Clearly, like denying the truth doesn't make you right. Community service is clearly a burden towards the students, and we should not let this motion pass. We should reject it here and now. With that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Ismail.
8:24.
Now that we have heard all the 3 speakers from both teams, we shall take a short break of 3 minutes. During this time, both the government and the opposition teams will prepare the reply speech. The audience is requested to keep quiet during this time. Time of 3 minutes has ended. I shall now invite the second speaker from the opposition, Ifa Hanan, to make her reply speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to the wise agitator and the members of the floor. Today, I, as the second speaker of the opposition team, will give a reply speech to solidify our stance today. As I did before, I would like to reaffirm our definition on today's motion. Community service is voluntary service, and as I stated before, once you make it a requirement, you are only encouraging it to become involuntary service. Now, before I begin, I would like to clarify that the government team, as always, did not back up their arguments. They did not provide links, sources, articles, any of that sort, which invalidates their arguments and makes it baseless. Not only that, their arguments were basically the same. They kept repeating on how it could educate the students, educate the students, educate the students. So the reality is, the arguments that they gave are basically all around educating them, but just put in subtopics. Ladies and gentlemen, how many arguments can I make against that? In addition, they would often have very negative views on the millennials. Isn't it unfair for them to always make claims that millennials often use gadgets, are socially awkward, when in fact, you can find many people who are just as sociable, maybe more, because even without the exposure of community service. And last but not least, on what they stated that they tried to rebut on all our points based on the fact that they stated 5 times a year, 5 times a year, 5 times a year. But they never really clarified how long or how many hours they could put on that requirement. It could be from maybe 8 hours a week. Maybe it could be from maybe more than that, which will negatively impact on the student. Moving on, my Prime Minister would state that it will interfere with grades, and with that, I highly believe that is true. As I stated before, if we force them or give them the burden of having to do this requirement, it would only increase their stress levels, and it is something mandatory. Think about it. When you're put in the pressure to actually do community service, you will often overthink about it. Maybe you won't have enough time to do it. Maybe you would mess up or not even get enough hours to actually fill that requirement. Because of that, you will get so many side effects from stress and overall hinder your academic performance. Also, it is very counterproductive. They kept saying that the government kept saying that it will educate themselves and build characteristics. However, why would you choose community service to build those characteristics when there are specific programs such as leadership programs in Malaysia that is run by GIFT that can help you build those characteristics better and more effectively? In conclusion, we strongly believe that all students should not be required to do 1 year of community service, as it will only interfere with their grades, stress them out, and become counterproductive. Not only that, community service is a voluntary service, meaning you can do it from the cradle to the grave. Picking up a rubbish bin in your spare time just while you're walking across the street, that counts as community service. So why do we have to implement that on them now? And with that, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you,
406.
I shall now call upon the Prime Minister from the government team, Muhammad Arif, to give his reply speech.
Okay. Come to the end of the debate today. And let me just remind definitions which the government stand by, which is we define community service as work done by a person or group of people that benefits others in an area. So it's whether voluntary or not, it's up to the opposition definition. So okay, I respect that. So the thing is, we've been talking about stress with education, with community service. The thing is, let me clarify, we are not doing it a whole 1 year round. We're just doing it 5 times a year. It's the thing that the third minister could not understand, that what we are trying to do today, ladies and gentlemen. And now the thing is, they said that by forcing students to do 1 year, which we mentioned that it's 5 times per year, by the way, it's going to diminish the essence of voluntary work. But the thing is, isn't school the same thing? Like we're requiring students to have education for the better, and that is exactly what the government is trying to do. We're trying to add something to the substance in our core curriculum. So, what the opposition is trying to do is something really idealistic. It's just trying to say that we should not do community service. We should not implement this into our education because it will just give us stress. Isn't that really idealistic, ladies and gentlemen? We are trying to require this because we know it's the better for our students, ladies and gentlemen. Not because we are trying to give them more stress. And how exactly can community service 5 times per year and also education can cause stress, ladies and gentlemen? That's why I think it's such an idealistic idea to think that just because we're trying to put 5 times a year in our community service, in clubs, and it's going to cause stress. So let me just re-clarify. We don't want to stress our children. We are looking at a better and a realistic view, ladies and gentlemen. We are trying to make the education system better and adding something better into the substance of our education system, ladies and gentlemen. We're not trying to do something like forced labor. And I mentioned in my speech that we're not doing something like, just painting the roadsides. I mentioned an example, we're socializing with elder people who are, elder people who are really lonely because that's a part of a community act, which I stated that a community act, in a society we must help each other and interact with each other, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Muhammad. We have now come to the end of the debate. The adjudicators will now hand over the results of the debate to the chief adjudicator, after which they shall meet to deliberate on the best speaker.
Bagus.